If we lost the world standard dollar, that would be like losing a war, a major world war. We would not be the same country any longer. We're not going to let that happen.
Welcome to Conversations. I'm Muqtedar Khan, your host, and today I'm going to talk to you about the state of the dollar since Donald Trump became president of the United States of America. As you all are aware, the strength of the dollar as the world's reserve currency, the fact that most countries choose to maintain their reserves in dollar and most transactions worldwide happen in dollar. Most people like to save their life savings. Even countries try to deposit their surplus cashes into the US Treasury. The dollar has become the de facto currency of the world. And it gives the United States a lot of power and influence in the economic sphere. The fact that the dollar is the dominant currency of the world enables the United States to borrow at a lower interest rates across the world. And it also increases essentially the credibility of American financial institutions because they are all backed by the dollar. As you all must be aware that there have been challenges to the dollar dominance, primarily by countries like China, Russia, India, Brazil, members of the BRICS nations who have realized that one way to escape the hegemony of the United States is by either reducing the influence of the dollar in the global marketplace or essentially to try and create an alternative international economic sphere where the dollar is not the dominant currency. And so they have been advocating for de-dollarization. They have been trying to trade in their own local currencies. One of the things that has prevented de-dollarization to a great extent is the controls that China has on its own currency. If China were to float its own currency as freely as the US has allowed the dollar, then perhaps there would have been more de-dollarization than what we see at the moment. As you're aware, President Donald Trump is also quite acutely aware of this threat to the dollar and US domination and hegemony, and he has threatened to impose 10% extra tariffs on all those countries who choose to become part of BRICS or those countries who choose to act towards de-dollarization. In fact, he threatened to impose 100% tariffs on BRICS if they took any significant step towards de-dollarization. President Trump recently remarked that it is very critical for the US to have the dollar as the global standard, as the international standard. And if we were to lose that, it would be like losing a major war. These are his terms, his words. And so he does understand the significance of the dollar dominance that we have witnessed for decades, since 1960s, really.
But what they're trying to do is destroy the dollar so that another country can take over and be the standard. And we're not going to lose the standard. If we lost the world standard dollar, that would be like losing a war, a major world war. We would not be the same country any longer. We're not going to let that happen.
So in this conversation, I'm going to briefly look at what has happened to the dollar since Donald Trump became president and started pressuring countries, especially those who are members of the BRICS, not to take any steps to undermine the significance of the dollar. So I'm going to look at three things essentially. I'm going to look at the dollar index, I will look at the dollar reserves, and I will look at the dollar transactions. But before that, if you have not already subscribed to Conversations, do subscribe to Conversations, like this video, press the bell icon, and don't forget to share this video with your socio-political network. I would also invite you to become a member of Conversations so you can support it if you like. It is easy to become a member. Just press the join button on YouTube or click the link that is provided in the video description. For those who are already members, thank you very much for being members of the Conversations family. On July 27th, the next coming Sunday, I'll be having a Zoom conference for all members, 12 o'clock at noon New York time and 9:30 p.m. India time, and we will have one-to-one, face-to-face conversations about any topic that you would like to talk about. So coming back to dollarization. So dollar dominance really means three or four things. Number one, that most countries use the dollar as a reserve currency. Number two, that most transactions happen in dollar. So, for example, if Sri Lanka is buying or selling something to United Arab Emirates or Japan, the transaction will take place in dollars. There is also the billing issue. So the billing is also done in dollars, and finally, there is also currencies which are pegged to the dollar. And so if the dollar goes up and down, these currencies go up and down. So dollar is very important. It is the gold standard of international currency and exchange. So if you look at this chart here, this chart shows that on January 21st, 2025, when Donald Trump became president of the United States for the second time, on the dollar index, the dollar was above 108. So the index rating of the dollar was 108.06. And today it has declined and it has become something close to 97 point something. A little more than 97, so it and 97.82, and so there has been about 6.2%, 6.21% decline in the recent period, but there is a significant decline from 108 to 97. You could say clearly 8 to 9% decline in the on the dollar index. It had reached its bottomest point, that was in June, when it had gone, I think, below 96. Yes, no, above 96, but below 97 even. So right now it is at 97.8 at the moment. So basically, pretty significant drop, about 10 points on the dollar index. So what does that really mean? That when the dollar goes down, it is considered as weak, and when the dollar index goes up, it is considered as strong. When dollar is strong, imports are cheap. And Americans buy a lot and import a lot. That's why we generate such a large trade deficit of nearly $1 trillion, because the dollar is a very powerful currency. But when the dollar goes down, what happens basically is that things that we import go up, and so the inflation goes up with that. So, to put it very bluntly, what the weakening of the dollar does is causes inflation. And so right now you are seeing the dollar has gone down significantly. And that means that either we are already experiencing inflation or there is going to be inflation soon. And the primary reason for this decline of the dollar really is the tariffs. So the tariffs also raise inflation. And if the dollar also goes down, there is a double reason why there will be inflation in the United States. So you could argue that in the last 6 months, the dollar has become weaker. Therefore, imports are going to become more expensive. It's bad news for countries who are exporting to the US, because a weaker dollar means that their products become more expensive, and therefore their imports could go down. And it will also cause inflation, and it will also prompt the US Feds to raise interest rates. So basically, a weak dollar is good only for US exports, but otherwise it's not a good thing for the US economy. Let's look at the reserves currency. There hasn't been a very significant change in this, because this requires other countries to change their policies, and it impacts the economy of the other countries. It impacts their current accounts and their capacity to pay back their loans to IMF, World Bank, and other international institutions. So for example, if you have borrowed money in dollars from IMF or from World Bank, they're not going to take your loan payments or interest payments in rupees or yen or some other currency. Therefore, this is a bit more resilient measure. But nevertheless, in the last 6 months, we have seen a decline even in dollar as a reserve currency. As of December 31st, about 20 days before Donald Trump became president, the United States currency was 60%. That means of all the current reserves in the world, 60% were in dollars. The biggest challenger to the US is really the euro, which is a little more than 20% share of the global reserves. And that's primarily because there are so many countries which now have euro as their primary currency, and they also trade a lot within the European Union. But nevertheless, it impacts the U.S. And the U.S. now is at as of today, it is at 58%. So there has been a decline by 2%. It is not significant, but it will amount to hundreds of billions of dollars. So you could say that if Donald Trump was trying hard to preserve the United States as a gold standard for international trade, etc., then this number should upset him. Rather than going down, it should go up. And finally, I want to talk to you about transactions. So in this graph, you see two lines, the red one and the green one. The green one essentially measures the share of dollars in SWIFT transactions. So in December of in 2022, for some reason, the data point that I got was 2022, only 48% of the SWIFT transactions were happening in dollars. So only half of the transactions recorded by SWIFT, this is an international mechanism of currency exchange, etc. And if you remember, everyone knew about SWIFT when the United States banned Russia and prevented it from using SWIFT as a means of transaction. That doesn't mean that the dollar's share has increased. What it really means is that Russia, maybe Iran and Russia, and any other sanctions that Europe and the US have unilaterally imposed on the world, those transactions are now happening outside SWIFT. So basically what it might be is that the whole pie has shrunk a little in the last 2 years, and therefore the share of the dollar has increased. So it's quite possible that there is no significant change in the number of countries and transactions that use dollar, except that there are some transactions that are happening outside SWIFT. But if you look at the total number of actually transactions that have taken place in dollars, that has declined from 54% to about 49%, I think. So the total number of billings in dollars, that is going down significantly. So the summary is this, that the dollar has become much weaker today than it was 6 months ago, in spite of the fact that the president and this administration are more acutely aware of the importance of dollar dominance, are actively at least, well, they're proclaiming that they are working hard to preserve dollar domination. The previous administrations hardly ever spoke about threats to the dollar or hardly ever spoke about defending the dollar as much as Donald Trump has done. But they have done a much better job in the past of strengthening the dollar and defending it than the current administration. West and its unilateral use of international institutions is pushing more and more countries to essentially find ways of becoming free of US domination. And one way to do that would be to reduce the influence and importance of the dollar. It gives two things for countries. Number one, it makes them less prone and susceptible to US sanctions. And number two, it weakens the US. So anyway, so this is a point of concern for the US. And that's all I have to share on this issue. So if you have found this interesting and thoughtful, please subscribe to Conversations, like this video, press the bell icon, share this video with your socio-political network. And for members of Conversations, remember on Sunday, July 27th, we have our Zoom conference. So until next time, I'm your host, Muqtedar Khan. Take care.